InnerQuest explores various pathways through which you can connect with the infinite wisdom of the universe and apply it to personal, professional, and spiritual growth. This program, featuring accomplished practitioners, educators, and authors, is provided by Infinity Foundation, an innovative center for holistic studies and research. We invite you to share this journey with us.
You're an author, Jay?
Hello, welcome to InnerQuest. My name is Jay Stone, your host for today, and our guest is Carol Dianca. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
Well, let's tell our audience a little about Carol. Carol is a board-certified nutritionist and managing director of her company, Food Not Meds. She's the author of a book, Food Not Meds, host of a culinary and lifestyle trip to Italy each year, founder of her own cooking school, the Academy of Plant-Based Cooking, and she's also a clinician in private practice and public speaker. Is your private practice in our viewing area?
Yes, it is. I'm in Highland Park here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're in the Highland Park studios as we speak. Okay. Well, Carol, why don't you explain the name of your company, Food Not Meds? Why did you choose that name, and what does it mean?
Yes. Well, Food Not Meds is it's more of a philosophy than a name or a name of a company. I chose it because we can do a lot of things with the right nutritional intake versus taking medications every time we feel bad or have an illness.
Can you give us an example where we can use food, a way to kind of reverse disease or prevent disease instead of turning to medication?
Absolutely. We have enough research now. We have over 20 years of really proven good, solid research, knowing that saturated fat, for example, is detrimental for our health and specifically for heart disease. So if we can eliminate saturated fat from the diet and increase our intake of fruits and vegetables, that where we will get the phytonutrients and the very powerful chemicals in real food, we would be much healthier.
Okay, so our audience may not know where they're getting their saturated fats. Can you tell our audience what's the saturated fats in their diet?
Certainly. Saturated fats exist in all animal products. So any of beef, pork, chicken, dairy, butter, cheese, that all has saturated fat.
Is there some animal food where saturated fat is lower, let's say, in chicken than beef?
Not really, no. And
Okay.
the amount of cholesterol is actually the same whether it's turkey or chicken or beef or even fish, which a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, well, and people assume, you know, that, oh, it's healthier to eat chicken or fish.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, thank you for enlightening us. And you also mentioned eating phytonutrients.
Yes.
And why are phytonutrients desirable, and what are some sources of phytonutrients?
Okay. Phytonutrients are really important for us. We've stripped out most of them. In fact, I have a chart here that shows where we get 63% of our calories. And 63% of our calories today are actually coming from processed foods right down here. And these foods all have added sugars, fat, and salt. So 25% of our diet today, or our caloric intake, is from animal foods. So essentially, we've stripped out 63% of the nutrients in the calories that we are consuming every day. This has actually made us quite a sick nation. We can take a look at the changes in our diet, and we can compare that just with the changes in diseases that we have today.
Yeah, this chart is amazing. Please show our audience and explain it.
All right, and it's actually an updated chart. If we take a look at the diseases that were causing problems and what people were dying from in the year 1900, we see that the very top of the chart, it shows tuberculosis. And then after tuberculosis was pneumonia, and then even diarrhea, if you can imagine. And then fourth on the chart here is heart disease. And then after heart disease, there are The other diseases.
Liver disease, injuries,
Injury.
stroke, cancer, bronchitis, and diphtheria.
Diphtheria. So if you notice, cancer was third from the bottom and heart disease was fourth. Well, if we fast forward 108 years to 2008, we see that heart disease has now jumped to number 1. That is a food-borne chronic illness. And then,
well, can I play the devil's advocate? Aren't people living longer? Aren't people living longer in 2008 than 1900?
yes.
So, so heart disease is something more prone to get when we get older. Although I've heard physicians say that they're seeing heart disease in 20 and 30-year-olds that they used to see in people who are in their 50s.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. I agree with that. We are living longer. In the year 1900, the life expectancy was 46 years old, I believe, and today it's 78. But we're actually 27 out of 35 top economic developed countries. So our life expectancy is longer, but we're living longer with chronic illness. We're living longer taking medications. And again, you know, with the right dietary intake, we can reduce a lot of the medications. By the time someone's about 50 or 55, when I start seeing them, they're on what I call the holy trinity of medication. They're on something to lower their cholesterol. They're on a medication for lowering their blood pressure, and then the next thing that comes along is usually diabetes.
And what you're saying is if somebody eats a plant-based diet, they can avoid the holy trinity of medicines.
Yes, many times they can, and that's been proven today over and over. There are just a lot of thought leaders, and I work with 2 cardiologists that have their patients have changed them from saturated fat and animal sources of intake to plant-based, and the turnaround has been amazing.
And so what kind of feedback do these cardiologists give you?
Feedback on the diet? Or?
On the diet or changes in the, let's say, you know, when patients are exceptional, like to use Bernie Siegel's terminology, he talks about exceptional patients, in his case cancer patients, but we can say exceptional heart disease patients, you know, when they embrace the diet and the lifestyle changes, I mean, it must be amazing.
It is amazing, and one of the cardiologists is going to be publishing a paper because he's been keeping track of the results of the patients and their labs and what's been happening to them, and he's actually reversing diabetes. That's really something that can be
And he's a
turned around.
cardiologist.
And he's a cardiologist.
Yeah.
But, you know, once you have heart disease and you're on a statin, you're prone to diabetes next. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, heart or brain related diseases like the #1 cause of death in the United States?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the chart that I held up a minute ago also had stroke on there and respiratory disease, Alzheimer's disease. These are all vascular diseases.
And respiratory diseases, that's vascular?
Well, respiratory would be pulmonary, would be,
Okay.
yes. That
Okay.
would be.
And now, does our diet affect our lungs and our breathing capacity?
Not so much the breathing capacity, but what's happening today when we're eating these processed foods and we're devoid of the nutrients that were meant to be there, is that we're causing inflammation. And inflammation is really the underlying cause of most all chronic diseases. Inflammation, by the way, I mean, it's a term that's thrown around quite loosely today. It's damage to our cells. And that's what happens. If we take a look at the changes in our diet, I think that really brings home the point that we're talking about even further, and that is I call this the basic truth of nutrition. You really can't avoid the facts.
Wow, I'm just astonished. We go from sugar, 5 pounds a year in 1900 to 170 pounds a year?
Yes, every man, woman, and child, that's an average.
Well, what about people that don't eat sugar? You know, that means some people might be consuming twice that.
Well, the thing is, there are people that think they aren't eating sugar, but if they're eating any type of processed food, there's usually at least 3 or 4 types of sugar in that food. Sugar is a great preservative. I call it a drug rather than a food. I mean, white sugar has absolutely no nutritive value, and it's addictive.
I love being at parties and you just watch the kids after they have the cake or some other sugary treat, and it's like, oh boy.
Well, the one thing I like to point out is the very last one. In the year 1900, the average person was eating 131 pounds of homegrown produce, and of course that was organic produce, and families were out and they were in the garden and getting sunshine and exercise and growing their food.
And being close to nature.
Yes. Today, that average has changed to only 11 pounds a year. Wow. So we've exchanged good homegrown produce and organic produce for processed food. It's the same thing with
and also that homegrown, it's so fresh.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just so like fresh. right out of the garden. And can you hold up that chart one more moment?
Sure.
The bottom line talks about the calorie consumption. And it went from like 2,100 to 2,757.
Yes.
What is those extra 650 calories? Is that per day, I assume?
That's per day. And I call that the perfect storm.
Okay.
Because what we've done is that we're expending less energy and we're eating more. And that's the perfect storm for gaining weight. Absolutely.
And so you're describing what's mainly in your first book?
Yes, I'm describing a situation we had in my family, very close to me, of someone that had heart disease, had a heart attack in their 40s, and open heart surgery in early 50s. And for 15 years, I looked for answers.
Is that why you became a nutritionist?
Part of the reason that becoming a nutritionist was a lifelong passion. It started very early in my life, but it's why I have a clinical practice today, and it's the basis of the clients that I see.
And so you're working on a second book now?
Yes, I am.
And so how is your second book different than your first?
Well, the first book tells the story about what happened and the maze that we went through for years looking for answers beyond medications, and it tells the story and it has a few recipes in the back. The second book the title of it is Real Food for Healthy People, a resource guide. And it's going to be a guide for people that wanted to make some changes in their diet. It's going to help them with some culinary skills, let them know what type of equipment they need, and where to begin, and then there will be recipes as well.
Yeah, well, perfect segue into the next question. Why did you start a cooking school?
I started this, I had no idea that I was going to be teaching cooking, but I would be telling my clients, how to eat and telling them about the benefits of plant-based, and they'd be asking me what I was eating, because I have been totally plant-based since 2011 now.
And what kind of changes have you noticed when you went to a plant-based diet?
Well, I dropped 8 pounds without doing anything differently, and I was healthy before I went on it, and I take now less food supplements because I'm getting more of the nutrients in my food, and just a general good sense of well-being. Aside from that, I've also kind of evolved into not wanting to eat animals for the environmental purposes. Because the raising of animals and the raising of crops and GMO soybeans and corn to feed the animals so we can kill the animals and then we can eat the animal. I eat what the animal eats in order to get, my nutrition.
Well, I have a friend, he worked for a big agri-farm business, and so one day a farmer invited him for dinner, and they're at the table, and so my friend said, do you want me to pass you the vegetables? And the farmer said, vegetables, that's what food eats.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's really cute.
Yeah.
Well, to answer your question, though, then I started teaching my clients classes in my home and teaching them. I mean, it was amazing how many people have just left their kitchens and eat out an awful lot. and it grew, and then the classes got larger, and I thought, well, I'll just start a cooking school. This is this is a brochure, the front of a brochure, and it has my two kitchens. I have an outdoor kitchen, which is just opening up again, and my indoor kitchen, and we just have a great time because it's more than a school, more than a cooking class. It's actually an experience where people meet
and the
each other.
outdoor, I could see a grill. Do you also have some stovetops there?
Yes, I have stovetop. We have a full sink out there, a refrigerator, and I teach people how to grill vegetables. I teach them how to grill portobello burgers.
And was that a wrap that in that picture? Looked good.
And yes, that's one of the starter recipes. Just learn how to make a whole grain wrap and put some grilled vegetables in there along with some homemade hummus. And people are amazed at how good that can taste and how easy it is. I find it interesting when I tell other people that I'm plant-based in my dietary intake. That may sound strange to them. And I think, wow, we've gotten so far away from eating real foods that when we say we're eating natural foods, it seems strange.
Now, you're Italian descent?
Yes.
And so do you include do you emphasize a lot of Italian cooking in your classes? Or yeah, go ahead.
What I've done is I've learned how to make pasta out of zucchini and how to adjust a couple of things so that it doesn't have all the heavy saturated fat in it. And being Italian, another just outpouring of what I do is a trip to Italy once a year. I take small groups of people at a time, and we do a dietary and culinary experience. And I just came back last month, in fact, from a group of 20 people, where we go to the Amalfi Coast, and we learn about the lifestyle of this ancient culture that really hasn't changed much in the south of Italy. And by the way, the Italians are the third longest living people on the globe. The Japanese are first. But we cook for a couple...
Who's number two?
I keep forgetting. I'm not sure who number two is, but I need to look that up. But we cook a couple mornings, and we immerse ourselves into that lifestyle, and people come home and they decide they want to incorporate some of that.
Well, and I know that if I'm dining out in an ethnic restaurant, there's always going to be a vegetarian option.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it's because it's universal in all the cultures.
That's the best place to go, yes. In fact, I think Highland Park should have, more on the menu, more vegetarian and plant-based recipes. I think we would actually attract a large number of people that are looking for that today.
Speaking of Highland Park, you also do some community service, like you have like a group, I think in this very building.
Yes, you're right, in this very building. I have once a month. I started it in January of 2012. And once a month I hold a meetup group. And it used to be called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, but I changed the name of it just 3 weeks ago, and now it's called Plant-Based Nutrition for Life. And we meet once a month in the community room upstairs where the police department is. And the police department has been very good to let me use that space. There's about 260 people in that group now. And they don't all, of course, come to the meetings, but, I get 20 or 30. And we have one even next Monday night. So it's been a very nice experience.
So it's usually on Monday night?
I vary it during the week, because some people can't make it on Monday,
Sure.
but they can do it on Wednesday.
And how will people find out about your classes? On your website? Or?
Yeah, my website. It's called Food Not Meds. Everything I do is called Food Not Meds.
Yeah.
And yes, and then I have it's called the Academy of Plant-Based Nutrition. And I have a newsletter list that I have a database that goes out to.
Now back to your cooking school. What makes your cooking school different from other cooking classes?
Well, first of all, I would say the community that evolves from them. By the time people leave, they've met each other, they're making new friends. Secondly, I would say the very ingredients that we use. Most people are not used to using pea flour or almond flour or cooking without oil, and seeing how these flavors can still come out.
And so how would you cook without oil? Just use like a small amount of water?
I hesitate from using water because what happens is that actually boils the onions or the mushrooms or whatever you're trying to do. I like to take a heavy bottom pan, make it very hot, and you know it's hot enough when you just throw a couple drops of water in there and it beads up and jumps around in the pan. And then you put in whatever you're going to cook, and then put a little bit of vegetable broth and let it cook slowly. And the flavors are just so wonderful, and they're not weighted down and they're not masked with oil.
And so why are you trying to avoid the oil? Is it the saturated fat or?
Yes, there's 120 calories in 1 tablespoon of oil, and 14% of the calories are saturated fat. We've come to way overuse oil, cooking oil, all types of oil, and we've heard so much, I know, that heart-healthy olive oil is good for you, and it's okay in very small portions. But Caldwell Esselstyn wrote the book Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, and he was from Cleveland Clinic, and he has research showing that too much oil, and he actually advocates no oil, damages the inside of our arteries. Once that lining is damaged, that's when the cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, gets oxidized, causes plaque, and when the cap of the plaque ruptures, that's what causes a heart attack. So he calls it the gateway to heart disease.
Now, LDL, that's the bad cholesterol, and aren't there tests where they test, you could actually measure the good and the bad cholesterol?
Yeah, you mean the good and bad LDL or overall?
Overall.
Overall, yes. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And do you see changes with like the patients, your cardiology patients?
Oh yes, absolutely. When you eliminate the animal products and you eat mainly fruits and vegetables and you're not using oils, cholesterol drops through the floor.
Yeah. Can you actually start seeing results in like a month?
Yes, you can see results in a month. You can see results with diabetes in a month and with cholesterol, but you know, cholesterol, you should really give it like 30 or 90 days. What I do when I see a client is I want to look at their labs. I want to see where they are, where we're starting, and then maybe in 60 or 90 days the next lab work.
Okay. Now, diabetes is increasing in children. Do you ever work with children?
I have not worked with children, no. And I really started out as heart disease being my specialty, and I am naturally moving into diabetes now because it's so prevalent, but I don't see children. Yes, there are 29.8 million people in the U.S. today that are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and there's another 79 million that are pre-diabetic.
And so why are so many more people getting diabetes or becoming pre-diabetic?
Well, there are some medications that kind of cause that disposition, and then it's the rise in obesity.
So there's a correlation between obesity and diabetes?
Yes, type 2. Now, type 1 is a genetic, cause of diabetes.
Yeah, is type 1 diabetes going up as well?
No.
Okay.
No, that's a genetic diabetic.
Okay. All right. And so tell our audience, what inspired you and what is the foundation of your knowledge?
Well, the foundation of my knowledge started when I was, 14 years old, just becoming very, very interested in nutrition. And then I went on to get my undergrad degree in biochemistry. And by the way, what I've learned over the years is that it's the biochemistry training that I have that has helped me with the cooking, my good chemistry background. And then,
how so?
Well, I can tell now what ingredients to put together if I want something to rise. Like it's a vinegar and then an acid and a base in a recipe. and what heat does and why it does. Like,
can you give some examples of food?
Yeah, when you eliminate white processed flour and start using other flours, there's a problem sometimes with getting it to really look and feel and taste delicious. So you have to be able to make it rise, and you have to make it look like it's something you want to eat. So what I use is arrowroot flour, which is a starch.
Yeah.
And I know that if I can replace baking soda, which usually has aluminum in it, with arrowroot flour, and to thicken things.
Oh, I've been using arrowroot for like 30 years.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah. Did you ever see like the plant arrowroot being harvested?
No.
It's a huge plant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it, but I haven't grown it myself and harvested it myself. And so when you were young, were you interested in nutrition because you wanted to look good, or is it because you wanted to be healthy?
Well, probably both, especially when I was 14 years old. But I was raised on the Mediterranean diet. I was raised on basically a healthy diet.
Were you raised in this area?
I was raised in a very heavy Italian immigrant community in Wisconsin, in Kenosha.
Okay.
And my mother would make me lunch every day, and I would bring the lunch to school, and she would wrap it in wax paper in a bag. And one day I opened it up, and the kids around me just couldn't even identify what I was eating. They were very intrigued. And it was natural foods. It was walnuts and dried apricots and so forth, and a thermos of water. And then I looked around, and I saw white bread and bologna and things I had never seen. Yes, and Oreo commercial cookies and cans of soda. And then I thought, well, why am I eating like this? Why are they eating like that? And what's the difference in your health? Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of it all. Then as a young mom, I was always reading labels and went on to school.
And did you get to a point where you went back to your mom and go, you were right all those years?
Yes, absolutely. She was wonderful. She was wonderful.
Was she a good cook as well?
Yeah, she was a great cook. She cooked in the Neapolitan tradition. She's from Naples, Italy. She was conceived in Naples and born in the United States, and she cooked as they do in Napoli.
Well, we've got less than a minute, so anything you want to add about your services or any information? Last chart you want to get in there?
Yeah, I don't have a chart, but I have a piece of paper here if we can zero in on it, and if not, I can speak to it. It's the 10 best and 10 worst foods for health and longevity. And so I guess, if anyone is really interested to change their diet or improve their diet, I would say go heavy on greens, these fruits and vegetables, beans, onions, mushrooms.
Whole grains?
Whole grains, and not as much wheat whole grain, but other whole grains, quinoa, which is sometimes called a seed. And then to stay away from like flavored yogurts and these foods with saturated fat, the donuts and fried foods. And even just making that type of a change and crowding out some of the processed foods.
I got to wrap it up. I'm getting a signal here.
I'm sorry.
For more information about Carol Dianca, Infinity Foundation, or Quest, stay tuned to the Credits End. Till next time, wish you good health, good fortune, good spirits. Great job, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information about this show, our guests, Infinity Foundation, or any of our other programs, please visit our website, infinityfoundation.org, or call us at 847-831-8828.